In the bustling city of Lagos, where dreams were made and shattered, James and Bella's love story stood as a beacon of hope and passion. James, a diligent young man with aspirations of a brighter future, had captured the heart of Bella, a stunning beauty whose charm and grace were the talk of the town. Bella's radiance attracted many admirers, but none were as persistent as Jackson, a wealthy businessman known for his extravagant lifestyle and relentless pursuit of what he wanted. He was accustomed to getting his way, and this time, his heart was set on Bella. Jackson spared no expense in his pursuit of Bella. He showered her with the most extravagant gifts: a diamond necklace that sparkled like 1,000 stars, a luxury car that would turn heads on any street, and vacations to exotic destinations that most could only dream of. He whispered promises of a life where she would never want for anything, where comfort and luxury would be her constant companions. Jackson spoke to her with words so sweet and flattering that they could easily have won over anyone else. He painted a picture of a future filled with opulence, where she would be the queen of his lavish world. Yet, despite all his efforts, Bella remained unwavering in her devotion to James. Her love for him was pure and true, and no amount of material wealth or enticing offers could tempt her away. Her heart was firmly set on James, and she couldn't imagine a life without him by her side. All the riches in the world meant nothing to Bella if they didn't come with the love and companionship she shared with James. However, their lives took a dark and unexpected turn when James suddenly fell seriously ill. What started as minor symptoms quickly escalated, and before they knew it, James's health was deteriorating at an alarming rate. They rushed to the hospital, hoping for some relief, but each visit only brought more bad news. The doctors, after running a series of tests, eventually broke the heartbreaking truth to them: James was in critical condition and needed urgent surgery if he was to have any chance of survival. The surgery, however, came with a price tag that was far beyond their means. It was an amount so large that it felt impossible for them to gather, no matter how hard they tried. Bella and James weren't wealthy, they lived modestly, getting by on what they had. They reached out to everyone they could think of, friends, relatives, even distant acquaintances, hoping to gather enough money, but their efforts fell short. Each failed attempt to raise the funds added to Bella's growing sense of despair. The reality of the situation weighed heavily on her heart as she watched the man she loved weaken with each passing day. The thought of losing James, of a life without him, was unbearable. She could see the pain in his eyes and the fear of the uncertain future that lay ahead. As the days went by, the urgency of the situation became more pronounced, and Bella felt the crushing weight of desperation, knowing that time was running out and that James's life hung in the balance. With no other options left, Bella found herself facing an impossible choice. Every door she had knocked on for help had been closed, and every possible source of financial support had dried up. The weight of James's deteriorating health pressed on her mind, and the urgency of the situation left her with nowhere else to turn. It was then that Bella, in her desperation, made the agonizing decision to approach Jackson for help. She had resisted this idea for as long as she could, knowing full well the kind of man Jackson was and the risks involved. But as much as she dreaded it, she realized that Jackson, with all his wealth and influence, was her last hope of saving James. The thought of going to him made her stomach churn, but she steeled herself and set out to meet him. When Bella finally sat down with Jackson, her heart pounded in her chest. She explained James's dire situation, hoping against hope that Jackson might help out of simple human kindness. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be that easy. Jackson listened carefully, his expression revealing nothing. Then, as Bella feared, he laid out his condition. He would give her the money, enough to cover all the medical expenses and more, but only if she agreed to sleep with him. The words hit Bella like a slap in the face. She was horrified, disgusted by the callousness of the offer. She could hardly believe that Jackson, knowing the desperate situation she was in, would try to take advantage of her in such a way. Bella felt a wave of revulsion and anger rising within her. Without a second thought, she stood up and walked away, leaving Jackson behind, determined never to degrade herself like that, no matter how dire the circumstances. But as days passed, and James's condition worsened, Bella's resolve began to crumble. She watched helplessly as the man she loved suffered more each day, his life slipping away bit by bit. The doctors continued to warn her that time was running out, and the surgery needed to happen soon, or it would be too late. Bella's heart was breaking. She had exhausted every other avenue, and Jackson's cruel proposition echoed in her mind. The choice she faced was unbearable, but as she watched James grow weaker, she realized that her love for him was stronger than her pride, stronger than her fear, stronger than anything else. In the end, Bella was left with no other options. The desperation to save James, the fear of losing him forever, pushed her to make the most difficult decision of her life. With a heavy heart and tears in her eyes, she returned to Jackson, knowing what she had to do, even if it meant sacrificing a part of herself that she could never get back. Caught in the painful conflict between her deep love for James and the unbearable demand Jackson had placed upon her, Bella was forced to make a heart-wrenching decision. She knew that what Jackson was asking of her was something she could never have imagined doing under any other circumstances. It went against everything she believed in, everything she valued. But as she weighed the choice before her, she realized that there was nothing she wouldn't do for James, nothing she wouldn't sacrifice to save his life. With a heavy heart and tears streaming down her face, Bella made the ultimate sacrifice. She did the one thing she had hoped she would never have to do. She gave in to Jackson's demand and slept with him, knowing that it was the only way to secure the money needed for James's life-saving surgery. The experience left Bella feeling shattered and empty, but she forced herself to focus on the reason she had done it, to save the man she loved. With the money now in her hands, she quickly arranged for the surgery, hoping and praying that it would be enough to save James. The procedure went ahead, and to Bella's immense relief, it was a success. The doctors were optimistic, and soon James's health began to improve. The color returned to his cheeks, and the strength returned to his voice. Bella watched as he regained his vitality, feeling both joy and sorrow, joy that James was getting better, and sorrow for the secret she now carried in her heart. As James began to recover, he was filled with gratitude and happiness. He couldn't believe how lucky he was to have survived such a serious illness, and he was even more amazed by Bella's ability to raise the enormous amount of money required for the surgery. James couldn't stop marveling at how she had managed it, given how difficult their financial situation had been. One day, as they sat together in the hospital room, James looked at Bella with eyes full of love and curiosity. He asked her how she had come up with such a large sum of money. He knew they didn't have wealthy connections, and he was puzzled by how quickly she had managed to get the funds. Bella's heart skipped a beat at his question. She had known this moment would come, but it still filled her with dread. She couldn't bring herself to tell James the truth, knowing it would shatter him. The thought of losing his trust, of breaking his heart, was too much to bear. So, with a heavy heart and a trembling voice, Bella lied. She told James that a friend had given her the money, someone who had come through for them in their time of need. It was a simple lie, one that James accepted without question, but it weighed heavily on Bella's conscience. Even as James smiled at her, grateful and relieved, Bella felt the burden of the secret she was now forced to carry, a secret that threatened to unravel everything they had once shared. James had been feeling content and at peace for a few weeks, as life had finally returned to a sense of normalcy. He had fully recovered, both physically and emotionally, from everything that had happened, and it seemed like his relationship with Bella was stronger than ever. They spent time together, laughed, and shared moments that made him believe they were truly happy again. But then, unexpectedly, everything fell apart in an instant. One day, a package arrived for James, and when he opened it, he found something that shook him to his core. Inside the package were photos and videos showing Bella with Jackson on the very night she had made a choice that had once broken her heart. Seeing those images, James was filled with a deep sense of betrayal. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The woman he loved, the one he thought he knew so well, seemed to have been unfaithful to him. The emotions that surged within him, rage, pain, and disbelief, were overwhelming. He was consumed by the thought that Bella had cheated on him. With these feelings raging inside him, James went to Bella and confronted her, his voice filled with anger and hurt. He demanded to know the truth, but in his fury, he wasn't able to listen. The anger was so intense that it drowned out any possibility of understanding or conversation. He couldn't hear Bella's side or give her a chance to explain. Instead, he accused her of cheating and, in his pain and confusion, ended their relationship without a second thought, leaving no room for reconciliation or even a proper discussion. Bella was devastated. The love she had sacrificed everything for was now in ruins, all because of Jackson's cruel scheme. Jackson had orchestrated the entire scenario, hoping that by driving a wedge between James and Bella, he could finally claim Bella for himself. But his plan backfired. Bella, filled with anger and betrayal, confronted Jackson, giving him a piece of her mind. She made it clear that no matter what he did, he could never replace James in her heart. Even though Bella was deeply heartbroken, she refused to give up on James. She couldn't bear the thought of losing him, especially when she knew the truth he needed to hear. Bella was determined to make him understand what had really happened, to explain everything to him. However, every time she tried to reach out to James, hoping for a moment to talk, she was met with nothing but a cold and distant response. He wouldn't listen to her, he wouldn't even look at her. This rejection only deepened her despair, leaving her feeling isolated and helpless. Desperate for someone to understand, Bella decided to turn to Martin, who was James's closest and most trusted friend. She knew that if anyone could help, it would be him. When she finally got the chance to speak with Martin, she couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. She poured out her heart to him, sharing everything she had been holding inside. She explained the painful choice she had made, to be with Jackson on that fateful night, not because she wanted to, but because it was the only way she could save James's life. She told Martin how she had never imagined that Jackson, in his deceit, had secretly recorded what happened between them. Bella spoke with a heavy heart, hoping that Martin could see the love and sacrifice behind her actions, even if James couldn't. As Martin listened, he felt the weight of Bella's words. He could sense the deep love and pain she carried, and he understood the magnitude of the sacrifice she had made out of her love for James. Martin realized how tragic it was that James didn't know the full story, and how this misunderstanding had torn them apart. After hearing everything, Martin promised Bella that he would do whatever he could to help. He assured her that he would talk to James, explain what really happened, and try to bridge the gap that had grown between them. Bella's story had moved him deeply, and he knew he had to act to help his friend see the truth before it was too late. Martin knew that talking to James wouldn't be easy, but he couldn't stand by and watch his friend suffer without knowing the full story. He decided to approach James carefully, knowing how deeply hurt and angry he was. When Martin finally sat down with James, he spoke with patience and understanding, urging James to look beyond the rage that was consuming him and consider that there might be more to the situation than he knew. Martin reminded James of the love and trust they had shared, and how important it was to hear Bella out before making any final decisions. At first, James resisted. His heart was still filled with pain, and the idea of facing Bella after what he believed was her betrayal felt almost unbearable. But Martin didn't give up. He gently encouraged James, asking him to put aside his anger just long enough to listen to Bella's side of the story. Martin explained that Bella was devastated and desperate for a chance to explain what had really happened, and that perhaps, things were not as simple or clear-cut as they seemed. Slowly, over time, James began to soften, realizing that maybe he owed it to himself, and to Bella, to at least hear what she had to say. After much persuasion and reflection, James finally agreed to meet with Bella. When they sat down together, the air between them was thick with tension and unspoken feelings. James looked at Bella, his heart still heavy, but with a glimmer of hope that there might be an explanation that could make sense of the pain he was feeling. Bella, on the other hand, was nervous but determined. She knew this was her chance to make him understand the truth, and she couldn't afford to hold anything back. With a deep breath, Bella began to tell James everything. She spoke softly but clearly, her voice steady despite the emotions welling up inside her. She explained how she had found herself in an impossible situation, forced to choose between losing James forever or sacrificing her dignity in a desperate attempt to save his life. Bella described the agony of making that choice, the fear that had driven her to do something she never thought she would, and how her actions were born out of an overwhelming love for him, not out of desire or betrayal. She told James how she had never wanted to hurt him, how every step she took was filled with the hope of keeping him safe, even if it meant losing everything else in the process. As Bella spoke, James listened, his heart slowly beginning to understand the depth of the pain and love behind her actions. He realized that what he had thought was a betrayal was, in fact, a sacrifice made out of love, and that Bella had suffered just as much, if not more, than he had. The anger that had consumed him began to fade, replaced by a profound sadness and a new understanding of the situation they both had endured. James was deeply moved. He realized that in his anger, he had failed to see the immense love and sacrifice behind Bella's actions. The pain of what had happened couldn't be erased, but James understood that Bella had done what she thought was necessary to keep him alive. He apologized for not listening sooner, and they reconciled. Their love, though tested by the harshest of trials, emerged stronger. They vowed never to let anything come between them again. As the days turned into weeks and then into months, their relationship blossomed once more, built on a foundation of love, understanding, and unbreakable trust. Bella and James learned that true love isn't just about the good times, but about standing by each other, even when the world seems to be against you.